Of the entire Mate 80 lineup, the quietest is Mate 80 Pro. This is the first time I've seen a Huawei Pro model be overlooked. Those years ago, Pro was Huawei's true flagship tier. Even after Huawei added Pro Plus, the Pro remained the top seller in the line. This year, with Huawei Pro Plus became Pro Max, the gap feels wider now, and base models now match Pro specs closely. Then, the other day, while browsing the channel, I saw a few folks still watching my Mate 70 Pro videos. What's up with the Mate 80 Pro? It makes folks reminisce. So in your eyes, which Huawei Pro model is the best of all? There are few detailed videos on Mate 80 Pro online, but who is Hua Shuo? As long as folks still watch our niche phone videos, Peanut Talk will keep it up. Thought about it, 周期人 bonus still holds. I bought this used phone on Xianyu for a brand new price. Hope you'll give it a like and a coin. Thanks a lot. This phone here, what upgrades does Mate 80 Pro have versus the prior two Pro models? Second, what changes in the Pro specs this time? How does it differ from the Mate 80 Pro Max? And which of the two major Pro variants suits best? These questions we'll address. Hello, I'm Hua Shen, missed you dearly after these days. Mate 80 Pro is the most unique in the Mate 80 series, with RAM as the dividing line. The 12GB model uses Kirin 9030, while 16GB and up are Kirin 9030 PRO, including the 1TB variant. Due to various reasons, we still cannot inspect the chip's internals for diffs, but we can test it out. This 12GB Mate 80 Pro lets us see just how much it lags behind the 9030 Pro. We can also check how these back covers of varied materials affect cooling. First up, Honor of Kings. Both Mate 80 Pro and the Max can run Ultra Plus 120 FPS, which looks far better than the 60/70 HD 120 modes. Since this game isn't that tough, I thought there'd be no surprises. Each of the four phones ran full frames in a line. But on closer look, the Mate 80 Pro had the highest low frames here with a clear edge. The 60 chipset Honor of Kings HD 120 needs 4 watt, while the 70 uses just 2.8 watt. And both 80s have better visuals, so higher power use makes sense. But the 80 Pro's power draw is even better than Max. It runs Honor of Kings at just under 3.4 watt, 0.2 watt, less than Max, which defies expectations. Let's test once more this time. Pro Max did warm up, but still trails the Pro in performance. If 9030 trumps 9030 Pro, who would want the top tier spec? No rush, let's try something else. TFT just rolled out a new season, and Zhou Qi did the select all. I had 4 phones play the same replay clip, and we could still tell it was a Gen 2 model from power draw and heat. But the 80 Pro and Pro Max still tie in performance. So I can only hope for Genshin Impact now. This game still poses a heavy load for the first two Huawei models. Frames drop at 60 right away, then plunge sharply past 8.5 minutes, ending at 48 FPS. There are still minor stutters that aren't too severe. This experience falls quite short of the 52.7 average. Plus, this phone hits 44 degrees Celsius while running Genshin Impact. With a 5.6 watt ROM, it sure tried its best. The 70 model ran for half an hour, averaging 56.9 FPS, some frame drops at first, but not as severe as the 60. Of course, the 70 couldn't stay steady. 60 FPS dropped more sharply, but it lasted longer than the 60. You could get through your daily life in these 25 minutes. The 70 uses far less power peaks near 40 degrees Celsius. This is a big leap forward compared to the 60. And these two 80 models are trickier, since 80 Pro outperforms Pro Max here. On paper, the 80's average FPS is 0.1 lower than Max, but in both benchmark runs and frame graphs, Pro is steadier than Max. Especially low frames, Pro beats Max by 10 or so. But in this aspect, Max's power draw and heat outpace the Pro model. Though the edge is slight, we can now roughly guess that Kirin 9030 Pro shines most in high load scenarios. But it's a bit sad that for games like Honkai Star Rail, Harmony OS either lacks support or limits visuals. Once we tested 3 games, we can now agree as one. Kirin 9030 outperforms 9000s and 9020, yet it's still unclear which one 9030 or 9030 Pro is better for your top games. If the chip isn't a key factor for gaming, one lingering question remains, is 12GB RAM enough in daily use? If you weren't Huawei, I'd strongly urge you to buy the 16GB model, because I have a friend who just got a new phone, and with its 12GB RAM, it stutters and drops frames visibly. But the Mate 80 Pro's optimization is solid. I switched from Pro Max to Pro and saw no real difference. Of course, to be fair, switching from Pro Max to Pro does mean more background kills. When playing TFT and Genshin Impact, relaunching was needed more with Pro than with Max. Of course, for rigor, let's still test it just the same. Round 1 80 Pro boots faster than 60 and 70, but lags 10 seconds behind 80 Pro Max. Each app takes roughly 0.3 seconds lower. Then, round 2 ended similarly. The Pro lagged a bit mainly because it killed too many background apps. So 12GB isn't a major issue for Harmony OS at this point in time. But just in case, if your budget can stretch a bit more, I'd still recommend getting the larger RAM version to leave some headroom for the future. In other cases like video calls, the Mate 80 Pro and 80 Pro Max run similarly hot, though there is one exception. 4K 60 FPS recording, Mate 80 Pro runs 5 degrees Celsius cooler than the 80 Pro Max, a big gap. I took a close look and found that Pro Max has a wider dynamic range. So either Max has better hardware or its algorithms work harder. Either way, it performs better and runs hotter. Next up, many care about the Mate 80 Pro's battery life after all. This year, some Chinese brand smartphones have 7,000 or even 8,000 mAh batteries. Huawei takes a laid-back stance. 6,000 mAh on the Pro Max isn't huge by today's standards, while the Pro has 5,750 mAh. So normally the Pro should have slightly worse battery life than Pro Max. The results were surprising. The Mate 80 Pro's battery life matched the Pro Max, and gaps in sub-tests were minimal as well. So right now, the Pro Max has a bigger battery, but also a larger screen, so it evens out. Is this performance so bad? Not quite. It's roughly on par with last year's top-tier models. Both the Pro and Pro Max far outperformed the 60 and 70. What's even more neat, both Mate 80 Pro and Pro Max charge fully in 39 minutes, just like top students keep tight scores. Huawei has long taken pride in its peripheral specs back when few cared much about the motors and the speakers. Huawei stood out quite well. The 80 Pro and Pro Max both get the same hardware specs, though that's a shame. Starting with the 70 Pro, to aid battery cooling, Huawei swapped Mate's ACE LA9595 for the 8282 motor. It looks smaller, but the 8282 is thinner, so with similar force output, the Mate 80 series feels less springy and more solid in vibration. Next, let's talk about speakers. I've loved them since the Huawei Mate 40, and this design style has carried on through the years. And the Huawei speaker hardware keeps getting upgraded. Mate 60 Pro has a 1115A plus 1115K. The top unit was cut to a single diaphragm driver. Here's a fun fact. For the 70 Pro and Pro Plus models, speaker specs were trimmed. The Pro top unit is 1115A, now dual diaphragm, while Pro Plus got a better 0915. By 80, Huawei still trimmed the specs, but this round felt much gentler. Mate 80 RS is a so-coaxial 1116G unit, while Pro Max and Pro are stronger than their predecessors. Notice the 2 extra ports on Pro Max, Pro lacks them. This is a Huawei tweak to cut down on call audio leaks. The top speaker has 2 vents that let sound leak out, the escaping noise cancels itself, akin to ANC. Sounds a bit mystical, but the results are quite clear. Volume cranked to max. When the Pro Max is on a call, the leaking sound feels as if it's been noise cancelled. And with PRO, you hear it crystal clear. If you're using external speakers, these two models are quite similar. Both Mate phones deliver solid bass and good instrument separation, making them great for pop music. But if you listen closely, the 280s have a wider soundstage vocals, feel distant and hollow, while the 70 RS feels more intimate. Take the 60 Pro, its tightest, feels much like singing in your own bathroom. Now on the software side, most phones have speaker modes, but they're just for movies, games, and music, categorized by usage scenarios. Huawei is different. It sorts modes by motion strength levels. If you like holding your phone to listen, both Mate 80 backs vibrate the most. If you dislike it, switch to quiet mode, vibration drops sharply, though the sound is less powerful than before. Huawei did this smartly, tastes vary, so I let users choose, and avoid later OTA tweaks to dampen speaker output.
It's 360 models, shorty. The Mate 60 Pro is the most visually striking one.
Mate 60 Pro.
I personally prefer the Mate 60 model.
Most sleek, most balanced.
Because its round shape looks more harmonious here.
I think his styling looks the best. It feels the most refined and well-proportioned. The jade blue is stunning too. That phone was among the early ones to use fiberglass. Yet its fiberglass feel was quite distinct from others on the market. And the metal body is very strong. The trade is quite standout. Just in looks, the 80 seems less sleek than 60.
Comparing 3 Huawei Pro models, the Mate 60 Pro ranks top in looks. And in my heart, this is the most beautiful one ever, especially this Yachuan green YYDS. I remember when Huawei first unveiled it, our whole office gathered to marvel. Saying Huawei is still Huawei though, the Mate 70 Pro wasn't as stunning, but still a very Huawei-style flagship device. Quite elegant. It still looked PRO grade enough, since it differs little from the PRO/PRUS model. But with the Mate 80 series, just from render images, the standard model, large model, and Ultra look very similar, which is great for the standard and large models. Flat renderings can't show true build feel. Images can be misleading, yet the Pro and Pro Max differ quite a bit in hand. First, the materials. Pro Max has a metal feel, top-tier strength with notable heft indeed. The Pro model spec uses fiberglass matrix plus metal frame, and its back-to-frame blend isn't as seamless as the Pro Max. For Apple users, Pro is like iPhone 16 Pro, Pro Max resembles the 17 Pro. Since it's glass fiber, this ring on the 80 Pro was likely for Huawei's unified design language. Its ring's edges lack the seam seen on the Pro Max, and the Pro shows less color variation than the Ultra. Some folks online said if it's fiberglass matrix, no ring is needed, but perhaps I'd grown used to it, so I had the ring removed in post. Now it feels less cohesive. No wonder Huawei shapes users' tastes so effectively. Flat screens are the trend, but for Huawei compared to the old quad curve design, the Mate 80 now lacks some distinctiveness. And this ring could become the standout mark of the Mate 80 series lineup. The Mate 80 Pro has a smaller screen body and camera module than the Pro Max. Of course, this doesn't mean the Mate 80 Pro is small, since the Mate 70 Pro was already 6.9 inches, the same size as this year's Pro Max model. And the 80 Pro 6.75-inch screen is just a bit smaller. But the Mate 80 Pro is indeed the slimmest and lightest of the past 3 Mate models, under 8mm thick and under 220 grams. Especially since I switched from Ultimate design, the feel is much more noticeable and much better now. But its better grip is mainly due to its much slimmer frame. Huawei used to favor 19.5 over 9 screens back then, so many found the Mate 60 Pro hard to get used to at first. This generation not only has a smaller screen, but uses a 20:9 ratio. This slight tweak made the phone slimmer by a full 3.5mm. Holding this phone while walking is quite effortless, and with one hand, your thumb now reaches the far right edge with ease. The slim aspect ratio still holds up well for feeds, though not quite like big screens. When it comes to screens, the Mate 80 Pro and Max differ not just in size but in specs as well. The Linglong screen is the Pro Max's hallmark. That display is truly brilliant. But the dual-layer OLEDs need twice the organic emitters, and the precision demands are far stricter, leading to low yields and high costs. This Pro version lacks a chance this time. So right now, let's put the 4 Mate phones side by side. Can you tell them apart? Still quite okay. In any scene, the differences are clear at a glance. Linglong screen is bright. The weather in Hangzhou was great these past 2 days. I took sample shots with them. Since all phones look the same front-wise, I had to figure it out each time. Only the 80 Pro Max each time I spotted at a glance, so bright it stands out clearly. Since other phones' screens are a bit dim, I had to crank the brightness up each time. But once the sun got too bright, even maxed out, it still lagged behind the Pro Max. That's when I realized the better a phone is at photos, the better its screen must be. It's not just photos, say, when you're cycling outdoors, and using navigation a bright screen lets you read it at a glance. But if the screen is just a bit dim, you need to focus longer on the map. This isn't just a hassle, it's a safety risk. Besides peak brightness, in daily use too, the Mate 80 Pro Max is brighter than the Pro. And the regular OLED screen on the Mate 80 Pro meets basic standards quite well. But when it comes to brightness and power use, it does lag behind the top-tier models now. This screen peaks at 640 nits manually, gap jumps wider. At 250 nits, it draws 0.67 watt, 1.4 watt at 500 nits. But dual-layer OLEDs face tough uniformity issues at very low brightness. So Huawei kept the lowest brightness of these two Mate 80 models at 2 nits, 1 nit higher than others. But if we compare them, and if you often use your phone at the lowest brightness level, then the 80 Pro screen will outperform the Pro Max. By the way, the Ping app on Android doesn't support HDR on Huawei. If using native Harmony OS, Dolby Vision isn't supported, but HDR10 works fine. So you'll see the Mate 80 Pro and Pro Max look quite similar, but they differ greatly in screen size and body design. But apart from the screen, other differences aren't so stark, plus the Pro model feels better indeed. The bigger issue here is that PRO doesn't stand far apart from the base model. The Pro has a glossy frame all to itself. This is more of a taste-based choice. Take the 60 and 70 Pro, not as sharp as Pro Plus, but at least they outsize the base models of the same year. And 3D Face Unlock is a status symbol by the 80 series. The base model got too much. If you want to see a brief chat on the Mate 80 base model, drop 2 on Danmore if there are many. I'll ask Zhou Qi about his year-end bonus. Huawei now has a clear vision for Mate imaging, boost it as much as possible without threatening Pura, especially in color accuracy and low-light performance. The answer are RYYB and the Red Maple camera. The most obvious are the main cam and telephoto. The 1-inch main cam is Pura's baseline, while even Mate RS uses a slightly smaller sensor. But if we look at Mate alone, the jump from Mate 60 Pro to 70 Pro is huge, pushing Mate's imaging from lagging to top tier. And the 80 keeps improving. Since I only have the RS model of the Mate 70 series, its main cam differs from the 70 Pro. We'll compare telephoto and ultra-wide angle main cam just for ref. Of course, if the Mate 80 Pro's main cam ties, or even beats the last gen RS model, then it has already won. The main cam light intake improved slightly in these Pro models, though regular users may not notice much. To be frank, top-tier imaging hardware is now quite saturated. What truly matters now is the software, which performs well in many scenarios. Even the oft-criticized Mate 60, its main cam still has its strong points. Its software lags behind the times. In harsh backlights, the Mate 70 and 80 perform far more steadily. Interestingly, since the Mate 60 Pro has a 27mm default focal length, its 2x is 55mm, closer than the other three phones, so it edges in sharpness. At night, unless it's extreme, all phones are quite similar. But in some cases, the 80 Pro does outperform overall, mainly in local highlights, color, and white balance. Though 70 Pro has auto maple, Gen 1 just can't match Gen 2, especially with warm light. Only 80 is spot on. And if you're just taking photos, the Mate 80 Pro and Pro Max main cams are nearly indistinguishable. When it comes to Ultra HDR main cam, the 80 Pro Max tames highlights better and renders colors more accurately. This edge is even clearer in video. 4 models feel like 4 eras, but don't rush to buy on a whim. The Pro Max's Ultra HDR main cam relies on Lofic Tech, which only activates at 30 FPS. For 4K 60 FPS HDR, its performance drops quite notably. So if you often shoot 60 FPS videos, this boost might not work as well for you. So right now, Huawei has to pick between HDR and frame rates. Of course, the 60 FPS Ultra HDR main cam isn't useless. It just boils down to ISP differences. At 4K 60 FPS, the Pro Max records better in this scenario. So if you often record videos, the Pro Max main cam is a good pick. But if you just take photos, the Mate 80 Pro is fine too. The Mate 80 Pro ultra wide angle is a familiar face. 3 of the 4 phones share the same lens, except the 60. Back then, the 40MP ultra wide was exclusive to Pro Plus and RS. But I didn't expect that the 60 Pro Plus ultra wide angle review still holds true today. Whether day or night, the 40MP lens is not much better than the 12MP. Even with the 80 Pro in default mode, it can sometimes output 20MP shots directly, though our verdict was just that sharpening was slightly lighter. The Mate line isn't all about the imaging, and the Pro models aren't the top tier ones. The Mate 80 Pro telephoto hardware saw no upgrades from last, since Mate 50, each Pro model has a 90mm telephoto. Though 70 and 80 show 4x versus 3.5x before, it's just because the main cam's default focal length changed. In truth, it just adds 1 more millimeter more. And this lens is identical to the 70 Pro and 80 Pro Max, though the Max version adds a 6.2x telephoto. But in daily use, 4x is still key. The Mate 60 Pro was often criticized for its weak optics. Photos came out dull and hazy, while later Mate models gradually improved. But the 60 Pro's native zoom still holds up quite well versus the 80. But once zooming comes into play, with the new SR algorithms and AI, the 80 Pro leaves its predecessor far behind. Those lines on buildings, the Mate 80 Pro can guess them all with decent accuracy. Of course, the Pro Max still reigns supreme. Longer focal lengths mean the Pro can get simple lines, but the Pro Max crushes complex textures by far. The Mate 80 Pro telephoto at night outshines the 60 greatly. So if you're a 60 user, switching to the 80 Pro will bring strong positive feedback. But the 80 Pro versus 70 Pro shows no real improvement in image quality. And at times, the Mate 80 Pro, with its heavy computational marks, can look less natural, and at times, its smudging even hurts detail more than the 70 Pro. This performance can't match the Mate 80 Pro Max, of course. The Mate 80 Pro telephoto still excels in color accuracy as expected with the Red Maple imaging system. Gen 2, its gains even outstrip the main cam. If you get close, the 60 gets fewer data points, leading to wild color shifts the closer you are, the worse it gets. In the end, even the first Mate 70 Pro showed signs of falling short somewhat, but 80 Pro still feels rock solid. The Mate 80 Pro truly impressed me with its video. The 70's telephoto shots are decent, but its video quality regressed sharply, even lagging behind the 60. The 80 Pro Max excels in both photos and videos, with 10x recording clarity that's truly sharp. Yet it still falls short of the Pro Max model. So the Mate 80 Pro now has more refined telephoto algorithms, and its Red Maple imaging system boosts the baseline performance compared to before, but its upper limit compared to the 70 Pro hasn't improved much. If you seek poetry and distant horizons, either splurge on Pro Max or pick pure 80 Ultra. We often stress that portrait mode embodies the synergy of camera hardware and software, and this mode clearly shows Huawei's progress in recent years. The Mate 60 Pro has 3 focal lengths, while the 70 Pro and 80 Pro have 4, and the Mate 80 Pro Max has 5. But Huawei's portrait mode has stepless zoom, offering near infinite focal ranges. But limited by telephoto reach, the 70 and 80 Pro offer 1x to 6x, while the Mate 80 Pro Max goes up to 10x. The first difference is depth. Huawei's blur weakens from the 60 to the 80. On one hand, tastes have shifted over the years. People no longer chase shallow depth of field, so obsessively on the other. Stronger blur reveals more flaws. The Mate 80 does indeed have better hair cutting with true strand level precision. The 70 still removes some loose hairs in edits, and the 60 is even worse. Edges show flaws. The beauty filters have evolved a lot. The Mate 80 Pro looks much better. It doesn't just brighten, but gives a healthier, rosy look. That's the real person vibes Read Note talks of. Smoothing skin and keeping fine details clash, but Mate 80 Pro strikes a good balance. The cute girl had a pimple lately. 60 Pro showed almost no retouch. The 70 and 80 improved a lot, with the 80 looking more natural, not over-smoothed and still detailed. Backlighting has long plagued portraits, but Huawei's main cam with variable aperture can shrink the iris in high-contrast scenes to capture starburst, but only the 70 and 80 can, not the 60. Huawei has both joys and quirks in night portrait shots. The plus side is the 80 Pro has great image quality even in low light. You can snap vivid shots without a flash. That surely owes much to the RYB sensor. The scale its portrait cutting drops quite noticeably. As for the Pro Max, you can see that portrait shots don't differ much from the Pro, though the Max offers a longer focal length for more distant portrait framing. The Mate 80 adds a cinematic video mode. It's just a real-time bokeh video, and only 1080p at 30 FPS for now. And this effect, well, it's just for fun, no more, no less. So if you don't need telephoto, I'd say the Pro and Pro Max are quite similar indeed. With RYB, the Mate 80 Pro has solid night performance, and with the Red Maple imaging system Gen 2, it stays top tier even in extreme conditions. If you're a 70 Pro user or have tried top tier imaging phones, then Mate 80 Pro does improve, but not in a game-changing way. And for Mate 60 series users, same advice, upgrade, it won't let you down. Now let's set the tone for this video. If the Mate 80 Pro Max is Huawei's top ultra flagship post-40, then the Mate 80 Pro is its most balanced flagship since the 40. Today we compare the 60, 70, and 80. Mate 60 marked a leap from 0 to 1, does good matter more than new. The 70 built on the 60, catching up fast, even taking on some purer roles. So you might feel the 80's camera upgrades aren't huge, mainly because the 70 already did quite well. The Mate 70 back then had issues with specs and OS 9020 was just average. And Harmony OS wasn't quite ready yet. With the Mate 80, Huawei finally reaped the rewards. It's an upgrade over the previous 3 Mate models, not just in one area, but across the board. This conclusion also holds for the other Mate 80 variants as well. So here comes a new question. How does the Mate 80 Pro stack up within Huawei's lineup? And how does it fare against rivals? Back then, for the entire Mate 80 series, I'd recommend the base model and 80 Pro Max. But now my view has shifted. The Mate 80 Pro is the most balanced option here. If you're unsure which Huawei big cup fits best, the Mate 80 Pro is unlikely to disappoint, provided you get it at the full price. Though the Mate 80 base model has seen major upgrades, the Pro still holds 2 key advantages, chips and telephoto, especially the Kirin 9030. So one might say the Pro marks where true Mate 80 begins. The Huawei Mate 80 Pro is now much cheaper, 500 RMB less than the 70 Pro. The Huawei Mate Pro now sits at the same price tier as top-tier models from major brands. We once used the PRO reviews to wish Huawei ruled skies and earth, for it was pricey. I used to pit Mate Pro against others Ultra models, and still won quite often. In the Mate 40 era, it could trump the pinnacle of Android. But times have changed now, rivals are stronger now, and prices have risen too. Especially this year, RAM is as pricey as gold. Though Huawei no longer holds the edge it had in the Mate 40 era, its pricing has grown increasingly appealing. If you ask Huawei's big cup to fight others Ultra models, that's quite tough. But if Huawei's big cup faces others big cups, Huawei might not struggle so much. Harmony OS and Kirin alone aren't modes, but together they form a genuine competitive barrier. You might outpace Huawei in raw specs, but minor stutters and frame drops vanish almost entirely in Harmony OS. Right now, whether third-party apps keep up depends entirely on others. You don't need to worry about imaging. The Mate 80 Pro is top tier in performance, excelling in color accuracy and night photography for its class. Which Pro variant is best to buy? 12GB is fine now. The 2 Kirin 9030 models likely differ a little. But my little stand-in from the seafood market said that budget phones often lose value fast, especially flagships too cheap, can be hard to resell. Like iPhone Pro and Pro Max, 256GB sells worse than 512GB. So all things considered, I'd suggest you buy the 16GB Mate 80 Pro if you can afford it, since most folks keep their phones for several years. Want to stand firm on 16G. At this point, the top-tier Mate 80 Pro faces a rival, the Mate 80 Pro Max. 1500 RMB gets you a full metal body and better cameras. Go for top tier if you must. But Pro is more than enough. I notice folks often catch on quite late. Mate 80 Pro has been quite popular lately. Its top-tier model commands a healthy premium in the secondary market. So it's not underwhelming, it just plays it low-key.